I feel like it's not crazy to say that Five Nights at Freddy's' first official VR game completely changed the scope of the series. Mainly because of, well, virtual reality. The other stuff definitely adds to it though, yeah. Problem is, these things can get pretty expensive. I'll just stick to my real life ventures from now on. Ugh. Anyway, yeah, I got one. Because if you're a FNAF fan, it's basically required now. With a lot of the newer games in the series forcing you to play with a headset. And I don't plan on waiting around half a whole year for that flat mode patch. I guess that's changing though, so yeah, whatever. But honestly, it totally makes sense. Early FNAF games already pretty much felt like they were made for VR in the first place. I mean, sitting still, pressing buttons, all in a constant game loop. Practically perfect VR material. To the point where I'm actually sort of surprised that fan games never really beat them to the punch. Or did they? Enter One Night at Freddy's 3D. Cleverly marked out for us, thank you. Chrissy, the creator of the game, set out to rebuild the entirety of FNAF 1 in 3D to offer VR support for at least one night of the game, coming full circle. Yeah, it's dated, coming out around the release of FNAF 3. I mean, just look at it, and even though the game labels itself as staying as close as possible to the original first game, it's pretty different, and to me, offers quite a different experience. I'd even say this is more of a VR version of an extremely early FNAF 1 inspired fan game, rather than an actual VR remake. Regardless, this was people's first look at what a VR version of FNAF could actually look like. Besides these things, before Help Wanted. Well, until this one. First released by DLG in September of 2017, Vive Nights at Freddy's, and that's no spelling mistake either, it was made for the HTC Vive. Anybody still remember that? Offered FNAF's sort of first unofficial look into remaking the original game in a VR landscape. After many small teases that Scott was throwing around at the time of an actual VR title happening in the future, which became Help Wanted obviously, DLG set out to build what this could possibly look like. And, well, it actually looked pretty good for the time, with many of these early versions drawing lots of attention on YouTube. Unfortunately though, right now, there are only 3 available versions of this game to play, each being a little different than the other, which are normal standard release, an Easter version, which was released on April Fool's Day, so prepare for that, and a Halloween edition, the latter being the latest release. So, why not take a peek at what Five Nights at Freddy's has to offer? Especially considering where VR has taken the series up to now. As I sort of said before, yeah, I mean, it's Five Nights at Freddy's in VR. Everybody sort of knows what this looks like by now. But for the time, especially before any images and trailers were shown of Help Wanted in the first place, this practically captures everything you'd want and expect in an office setup. I mean, it's got a throwable cupcake, a few paper balls scattered about, a non-drinkable drink, the Celebrate poster. Yep, that's all good, and even the inclusion of the phone. And, unlike our official VR release, this office more than welcomes you to take a peek outside those doors, which provides an, albeit small, look at the rest of the pizzeria. This time around, our lovely animatronics, realized in virtual reality, remain pretty similar to how they've always acted. Bonnie's on the left, Chica's on the right, don't forget to check Pirates Cove, yada yada. However, it seems the titular fluffy brown bear doesn't like to abide by the stone cold written rules. Unlike both Help Wanted and the original game, Freddy is allowed to go to either the left or right hallway, depending on its mood, I guess. And again, unlike his original iteration, can actually leave your doorway not too long after staying there. Which, while being just a little harder to manage this time around, is such a welcome change. Other than that though, yeah, these are the same characters you're used to. Just much taller and scarier in person. The cameras, I'll admit, can be a bit finicky though. Instead of how Help Wanted has it, with a big map clearly showing where each camera is located, FNAF here decides to use a much more realistic interpretation of the TV monitor's buttons. Which sort of means that you'll have to properly memorize the name of each camera to use this efficiently. It definitely helps to have the map next to it, but yeah, this messed me up a few times. You may notice that whenever the cameras are used as well, it starts to shutter the lights from the office, making everything just that little more terrifying. And also serves as a cool way of giving off that limited sight feel that the cameras gave in the original. And Oh, hey, look! I can see myself! Another quick thing to note here is the variety of options the game gives you. Everything down to how you want the buttons positioned, how big the office can be, and even a toggleable map for viewers of scared YouTubers to look at can all be turned on and off at the very start of the game. Besides that though, this remains scarily close to how Help Wanted's FNAF 1 section worked. To the point that, dare I say it, I think it achieves that original feeling that the first game captured better than the official VR release. Now don't get me wrong, I realize that technically speaking, Help Wanted is meant to be a game inside of a game type experience, with many of its flaws masking as fake bugs, and this thing of course, can't forget that, but for strictly a VR remake of the first game, I think this crushes it completely, down to almost every single aspect. But we're not even done, as after completing the one night here, which I believe lasts just as long as a regular FNAF 1 night, you're taken to a 3D realization of the FNAF 4 menu. Just no scary animatronics here this time. Good. Moving forward, you teleport to Michael Afton's room, which I assume is taking place as the Afton residence. Turning on the light switch reveals that you were just in the middle of patching up good old Fredbear, in something, again, a little similar to another mode I remember. Thing is, well, he's not the happiest to see you. But again, we're not done just yet, because right after that, we're taken back to the pizzeria. However, instead of our regularly scheduled sit and survive gameplay, the shackles on our feet have been let go. That's right, we're actually allowed to freely roam anywhere we want around the pizzeria, despite the characters still moving about. This is actually something you can directly control, as whatever location is displayed on the main monitor will include the characters that are supposed to reside there. Honestly, this has to be one of the coolest rewards you could possibly get for a fan game like this. And even though the flashlight and the monitor itself are a little buggy, it allows us to get real up close and personal with these really impressive models of the characters. Except for Foxy, for some reason, he's just gone. Our next release, titled the Easter Update, is not too different, besides, well, actually being a little misleading. That's right, this ain't no Vive Nights at Freddy's. We're playing Five Nights at, Mr. Hugs. For the April Fool's release of the game, each animatronic has been replaced by one of the members of Trash in the Gang, and, well, that's actually pretty much it. We'll say, though, that Mr. Can Do, who replaces Freddy in this version, is, for some reason, extremely annoying to deal with, to the point where I was pretty certain that this version was simply unbeatable. See, Can Do here likes to completely ignore any doors in his path, and is almost impossible to keep track of. Doesn't help that the only indication of him moving at all is through this extremely quiet, static soundbite. However, with a little luck on your side, it is somewhat possible. After completing the mode, you get sent to the backstage room, where a withered FNAF 1 Bonnie jump scares you. Sorry, I know this footage is bad, but you get the gist. Considering this is the earliest downloadable version of the game, this is likely meant to tease the Build a Fredbear moment from Alpha Nights. Not much else to say here, though. Our last version, named the Halloween Edition, seems to be pretty much the same thing as our normal version, just with a Halloween-themed makeover. Decorations are plastered all over the pizzeria, office, and the vast majority of camera spots. Everything here is much more festive for the spooky season, including the animatronics themselves. However, at around the 2 a.m. mark, this happens.
Whoa! What happened?
Yeah, not only is it much harder to tell what time it actually is, but each animatronic looks just a little more festive than they did before. Every character here, all nightmared out this time of course, has some sort of new mechanic. Bonnie sort of acts as Freddy here, in that once he leaves the backstage room, he'll pick either the west or east hallway to reside in. Just, you know, check the doors in time. Oof. Chica here will simply just wait around, playing some sort of music in the kitchen, until she randomly decides to rush towards her door in the right hallway. Which, honestly, kind of makes her a little easier to deal with. Foxy is actually pretty much the exact same, just scary. And Freddy this time isn't even really all too active, because his little Freddles have taken residence all over the pizzeria. Here you have to find each one scattered about on the cameras before Mr. Freddy here eats you alive. And yeah, once you make it to 6 a.m., courtesy of a Nightmare Yone jump scare, you get taken back to Build-A-Fredbear, so nothing new here. If I had to be honest, I really do think this fan game blows Help Wanted's version completely out the water. I mean, the visuals on the cameras, the fixed mechanics for a few outcasts here, the textures and models for the animatronics themselves, this fan game acts extremely faithful to the original game, at least in comparison to Help Wanted. To the point that, well, could you even consider something like this being a fan game in the first place? Well, yeah, duh. I mean, it is a game made by a fan. But seriously, it takes most, if not every aspect from the original game and just twists it for what's practically a VR port, which is why I think the original version and a lot of the other early versions aren't downloadable anymore. All in all, it's always been strange to me to see this fan game never really mentioned anywhere, because in my mind, this remains probably the best way to play the first game entirely with a VR headset. All of which, again, I feel that I need to reiterate that this was all mostly made before the release of Help Wanted, which is just extremely surprising in a lot of different ways. Yeah, there's not really all too much to this fan game, honestly, but what's here is really, really cool. And, of course, a little terrifying. I don't think I ever really got over the whole VR FNAF thing, which is why I'm still sticking to real life, baby. Mr. Can Do can't do anything to me here.